Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I am Naren Arulraja, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing, finance, leadership, HR, AI, law, and much more. Today, I'm super excited to have somebody who's on the cutting edge of AI, somebody who's trying to figure out how do we use AI to make the lives of practice owners, doctors, easier, faster, better. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. My guest today is Sebastian. Sebastian is a serial entrepreneur, educator, TED speaker, and of course, a founder of a company that's trying to change how practices keep track of patient data, keep track of practice management, information, and then of course grow that on the cloud with the help of AI. Sebastian is the co-founder and CEO of Digitail. That is Digitail. Sebastian, welcome to the show.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here.
Before we jump in, can you talk a little bit about yourself? Who are you? When did you get into the veterinary space? Tell us your founding story.
Yeah, the who are you is a really philosophical question, but I'll try to keep it short. So before Digitail, I was lucky enough to be part of building products. So we ended up building over 100 software products for different industries. This was in previous life with the company that I co-founded before called IT Gambit. And then towards one of the latest project was with a vaccine manufacturer, which ended up opening a bit the door to understanding more of the vet space. And that was when I started learning that unfortunately animal hospitals, the majority of them are still using practice management systems built in the 90s. And this has led together with Ruxandra to co-found Digitail, which is an all-in-one practice management system. And together with veterinary professionals, and technology experts, we've managed over the past 12 months to also launch Tails, which is the first AI assistant built directly in the PIMS. But all of this comes on the backstory of talking with professionals, going in practices. And one of the stories from the early days that still stuck with me to today, and there's many examples, but one of them that really stuck is that I was in a practice just witnessing what's happening, and I was starting to see the hecticness of the day-to-day. And there was one patient that came in with their dog for a recheck, but they didn't have the records. The system was down and they couldn't see the information in the system, and they didn't know what needs to be done. So instead of a visit that could have taken 5 minutes, you suddenly had 3 people trying to chase the spouse that actually had the information, calling the previous practice to get the information again. And so, again, something that could have just taken a couple of minutes ended up being like 35 minutes and 3 people chasing it. And unfortunately, this is what's happening currently in the vet space, where you have extremely motivated people that want to help patients and do their best, but the systems unfortunately don't work for them. They work for the systems and everything gets bogged down. And this was what triggered us to put a lot of energy into building the best systems for them to help them in their day-to-day.
Makes sense. So I assume Digitail, like most practice management software, keeps track of information, helps with billing, stores all that information, security, all that stuff up in the cloud. But we all have seen the explosion of artificial intelligence or AI after OpenAI became a tool that pretty much every person on the planet has at least used once. The idea that you can talk to a computer and the computer is like a human being that's smart, that understands you, that has infinite wisdom and knowledge and can tell you and help you with anything you want. Like, hey, you want to plan a trip to Romania, like that's where your development office is. It'll tell you like, okay, hey, day 1, do this, day 2, do this. Like it's magic, right? So it kind of totally opened up the imagination of people all over the world of what AI could mean to them. Of course, there are a lot of challenges and problems and everything else that comes with it. And it doesn't work for everything. For example, you can't, at least for marketing purposes, you can't use AI written content for SEO because Google will flag it and you will not rank and so forth. So there are challenges, and of course, and then you hear about hallucinations and where it goes crazy and does crazy things and all kinds of stuff, right? So anyways, So in that world, I think what you guys are trying to figure out is where can AI make a difference? So let's talk about some of those examples of where can AI make a difference in the lives of a practice owner today.
So you've said something super, super important is that AI is not the solution for absolutely everything. And this was one of the core principles as we started working with this technology to understand what is the workflow in practice, break it down into stages and see where AI can actually help versus being super unhelpful. Because there are areas where, again, the way this technology is built is on the probabilistic and not deterministic, which means that things like direct math or more mathematical equations analysis is not built for that. That's machine learning. It's a different section of the industry, not for that. But basically, I'll walk you through first how we ended up playing with this technology and understanding that's actually powerful. And it was in the early days when OpenAI just got their huge investment of 10 billion. It's hard to understand the sum, but again, 10 billion in the bank account to build the best technology for this. And we were skeptical. I personally, I was super skeptical. I thought this is just, again, another hype coming here. Nothing helpful. But then one of our colleagues, every single week when we had our weekly meeting, they were like, hey, you need to pay attention to this. You need to pay attention to this. And guess what we were doing? Not paying attention to that. We were like, no, we're too busy. We have our day-to-day things. Like, stop bothering us with this. And after this happened for almost 6 weeks, we said, okay, let's have a conversation. Tell us what's with all this AI. And we were like, why didn't you tell us sooner? Like, this is amazing. So we started then full switch. We started focusing so much on AI internally, and we started using it in marketing and product and engineering, and basically all the areas of Digitail. And after this, seeing the benefits for us and increase in productivity. And again, it got to a point where if you ask a developer who wouldn't use AI, they would say only masochists, because it makes life so easy for the simple minutiae type of tasks. So after that, we started doing a trial with 10 hospitals who became design partners in this, and we work with them by giving them access to AI type of technologies for their day-to-day. And the big learnings were that even if there are areas where it can actually be detrimental to use AI, we discovered at least 3 to begin with that were super, super impactful. The first one is dictation, which most of the people started already seeing this. It's becoming more and more popular, but it's the power that a vet can now focus on the patient, talking with the pet parent, and AI will capture that entire conversation and summarize it directly in the medical record in a SOAP format. So it's not only that it saves the time, but it also structures the information in the same pattern so everyone else in the clinic can then review it afterwards. So dictation is number 1. Number 2 is a general assistant, where think about all the times you've written an email and you spend time and time to just write the email for the pet parent, or writing recommendation notes that are personalized, because again, you can get them standardized, but you still need to personalize them. Well, all those tasks are done amazingly well by the general assistant. You just write to Tails, in our case, the way we've named the AI assistant. You just say, Tails, write this email for this pet parent to convince them to pay their outstanding balance. Writes a perfect email, and then say, hey, this is too soft, make it a bit more assertive. It changes everything and it writes that email. And then the third case that we've seen powerful is patient intake. So think about all the patients that have booked an appointment. They need to come to the practice, and you'll spend with most of them 5 to 8 minutes at the beginning of the visit to ask all the information that you need to know. Well, the AI assistant 3 days before can talk with the pet parents, and they can start the check-in process and basically asks all the questions that you would need to ask them based on the reason for the visit, patient history, and the visit type. So it asks all the questions, and then it prepares the summary and adds it directly to the SOAP for the vet to see at the time of the visit. And that again is a huge time saver. And these are like the 3 big use cases that we've seen currently super powerful in practice.
That's great. Talk about the last one. So is it an email, like it asks the pet parent to fill out a form, or is it like making a phone call and talking to the pet parent, like the AI, like what does it do?
So it can be in different shapes or form, but basically the 2 big ones is text. So directly in our case is through a pet parent app where the pet parents can engage in the conversation. They can start the check-in process, and basically the AI will ask questions, and it's a written conversation that goes through. The great advantage is that you can do this, basically the pet parent can do this the day before the visit, when they're at home, when they're with their spouse that actually knows more information. So they can, all of that can happen in a much more friendly environment. But the second one is what you pointed out, it can be also a phone call. So the degree to which current AI technology now can generate, again, voice and voice conversation is already human level ability, which means that you can schedule the AI to call the pet parent and actually have a voice conversation.
But right now, I assume it's not there yet, right? For on production, the voice calls, it's probably experimental. You still are testing it.
It's still experimental on the voice, but the early result that we're seeing is that it's hard for you to recognize if it's an AI or not. And we actually need to put disclaimers that it's not a person. And you've seen probably the case now also with Scarlett Johansson's voice and OpenAI and what's happening in the space.
I was going to ask you, are you built on OpenAI? Like, are you using OpenAI, their large language model behind the scenes to do your work?
So what we found out is that there are multiple companies. So the same way you have OpenAI, you have Anthropic, you have a couple of other companies, and each of them has different strengths. So what has worked best for us is to take the strengths of each one and use it for the specific use case. So to answer your question, we're using multiple models and we leverage one or the other one depending on the use case.
What about confidentiality data? Because I know New York Times is suing OpenAI because they're like, well, you're scraping all of our information and pretending that it all came from you when it actually came from New York Times. And here you're dealing with personal, confidential information, right? Very, very personal. So how do you take care of this? I know I love AI and I love the fact that it can save time, but the last thing I want is some private information on a server somewhere or on dark web somewhere, and somebody says, pay me X dollars, or I'm going to, do this to hurt all your customers, for example. Right. So this is a big, big, big concern, especially in healthcare. So how do you deal with that?
That's a really, really great point. From a practice management perspective, we're GDPR compliant, which means, again, we took a step further because in the US and Canada right now is mostly the Californian Act is the strongest in terms of enforcing data privacy. But the GDPR is the European one, which worldwide is like the most difficult to bypass. It's like really, really rigid. And we took a step further and are GDPR compliant because we want to make sure that the data of the vets and of the pet parents is well safe kept. But you pointed out that, again, with AI, it's really tricky to understand, has the model been trained on my data or has it not? So for us to be able to release this to our clients while we engage this in the enterprise agreements with all the models, basically all the underlying models that we're using, which means that they're forced to delete the data after it's being used. So it's a time span of a couple of hours and then they're forced to delete it. Now, of course, you can ask what's happening afterwards, and there's a lot of doubts that can come after. But our take was that it's a technology that's really difficult to control a lot of times. And if it's being trained on your information, you'll find it out super quick, which that's why these companies, they can't afford to do things like this. And again, besides the legal reason where they cannot, because it's not, they're not allowed and there would be severe consequences for them, but there's also the reputation at risk, which they can't let themselves do for training that. But again, this is only if you have an enterprise agreement and if you do things right. I can't say again, if you go now on ChatGPT and you use it for free, they actually say that they're training the models based on your data, because at the end of the day, if you're not paying, sometimes you're the product.
Yeah. So you're making sure your customer data is not being used to train the model. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we're doing everything possible in our hands to verify, again, all the legal agreements, all the data passing, all the API connections, make sure that doesn't happen.
I mean, again, I'm just trying to think 3 steps ahead. Can this open up for lawsuits? Like, is there a possibility you or your, anybody could get sued because of this, because of data, or you don't think that would happen?
And so the cases that you've mentioned, that's a really good question. And I would love people to talk more openly about this, because we've seen even in the practice management system space, no one asks the question of like, where's my data going? What's happening with that integration? How much of the data is being passed? Like, those are questions that unfortunately they're not coming in. Also with the AHA study that we've done, and we've seen that 50% of the respondents are actually for the first time concerned of data privacy, which is amazing. It's a really big step, and it's great that that's happening. But to go back to your question, is that when you think about data and models and all of this is that you'll have cases like the models had to grow somehow to where they are today. And there wasn't enough data just freely roaming on the internet. And they scraped, like New York Times, as you're saying, where they scraped anything that was publicly available to train the models. And what's happening, it's really difficult to say, but the best recommendation is that for the companies that have data is to start thinking about how the copyright law is changing for them. And this was something that happened also in the early days with Google, because Google had the same challenge with publisher and content writers with Google search, because Google would show that content in the Google search without the approval necessarily of the content producers. But they struck an agreement at some point where, again, you help us create the content and we help you position on the search. So
now, the way Google overcame it is say, well, if you want us to send you traffic, then of course we have access to your data. But if you don't want, just put this tag in your one of your files, and we won't touch your website. But it was okay, fine, as long as you are giving me credit and sending me traffic, I'm okay with giving you all my content so you can look at it and then help people find it if that's the relevant content they're looking for. So I guess the challenge here with AI is AI pretends like it's its content, right? OpenAI talks as if it's talking. It doesn't really give credit to New York Times, or it doesn't give credit to anybody. And also in the case of US situation, it's personal information of practice owners and pets and so forth. So that's where everything is so gray still. I think it's not enough clarity, I guess.
Right. And that's where most likely there will be some changes in how we all think about content and search in general. So that will be a big switch. But then the second one is, as an application layer company, basically the ones that are trying to build the best experience for the users, we have a couple of ways of handling AI technology. And one is fine-tuning models, or the other one is just passing content that you want it to be distilled, or basically tell me the summary of this document. And we've learned the lesson that the fine-tuning is something that we still don't know, and the industry still doesn't know exactly how it works. And there's still ways until we get there. But the big win is that even with the technology in the shape it's today, and just with passing information, you can get valuable results out of it. And that's the part that enables companies like ours to build great experiences.
Right. So as we bring this to a close, I wanted to kind of provide some immediate tangible value for our listeners. So let's say if I'm a practice owner and I want to somehow benefit from AI, what can I do? I know I could go to ChatGPT and say, hey, write me an email for this, and this, right? And it can do that. Can you give us some examples of things that they can do today just to kind of play around with AI and trying to see, does it benefit? Does it not?
So by far the first and foremost advice would be just go on ChatGPT or one of the other ones, create an account. Just if you use the free one, make sure that, again, what you type there is not sensitive, because that data will be used in training the models. If not, get the premium license and you can play around more with it. But from what we've seen, and we started doing many case studies with hospitals, and one of them was with a 5 DVM practice where they saved close to 50 hours of vet time per week just from the dictation. And this one, again, you can use it from even on ChatGPT if you want to try it in your day-to-day life. Is they have an amazing function with voice where you just download your thoughts. And you see, at least I'm also using it on a personal basis, is that instead of, oh, I need to write that idea or I need to do that, I just do a data dump of thoughts and let the AI rephrase it, do a summary, and I can then use it later in the day. So that's the first example of where you can use it and then see how that would apply in your hospital. Another one was we've done with another clinic where they had a 30% boost in productivity. And the story was really impressive because it's a 2-vet practice, and one of the vets got sick and couldn't come to the practice. And the other vet said, no worries, I'll try to do my best and take care of all the load. And Dr. Lisa was actually able to handle all the capacity and also go home in time. And they've done a math, and the annualized revenue, just for, if you would again annualize the revenue for that period with one vet, it was $1.5 million. And that's because, again, the technology enabled her to move fast from patient to patient and only focus on the things that she wants to do and not on the minutia. So writing emails, getting personalized discharge notes, all of those, or again, even reading the entire summary of the entire history, you could do it by asking the assistant, can you give me a summary of all these PDF documents, or can you give me a summary of all of this content? And these are, again, minutes saved in the day that leads to you spending more time on the things you actually want to do.
Right. Now, how do you make sure that it's not hallucinating or it's not doing something? Like, for example, you want to write a letter, right? If it says the wrong thing, it's as if you're saying the wrong thing, right? But do you still recommend people read everything over before sending it to a pet parent, or before adding it to the notes?
Yes, absolutely. So the place where this technology is today is that it shouldn't be used as again, you replace what you need to do. Is more of drafting the first version or getting the first set of information. It's still your duty to refine it and to press the final send. And this is how this technology is being used. And in the study that we've done, we had a question where, like, what are the top concerns? So again, we interviewed close to 4,000 veterinary professionals. This was a big study together with AHA. And the top concern that people talked about was that 70% of them are concerned about hallucinations. And it makes a lot of sense because the technology, it will still hallucinate. However, what we've noticed is there's two things. One is, as a good company, you'll find ways to reduce the hallucinations, not eliminate them, but reduce them. And the second one is that whenever AI hallucinates, it's big. It's big enough for you to catch it easy. The most tricky part is when there's small hallucinations that you don't realize. But that's why we're saying where technology is at the moment is always make sure that you review it and use it as a productivity tool, not as a replacement.
So it's not a replacement for the vet. It's really rather just a way to just make the vet a little bit easier.
Absolutely. And there's a really good saying with AI won't replace anyone, but someone using AI will, because again, it just improves your productivity and your
right.
data.
So in other words, he can do 2 people's job or 3 people's job versus, the other person cannot, because AI makes them more productive.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to learn more about your business, your product, like, where should they go? Give us something to leave behind so people can, find out more about your company and what you do, and perhaps even call you a sales team for a demo of some sort.
Absolutely. So if you want to find out more, go to digitail.com or follow us on social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. But what I would really recommend is either just, as you were saying, book a demo and just see the experience for yourself. One of our team members will be more than happy to show you how other hospitals are already taking advantage of this technology, or join one of our webinars that we're doing where we're showcasing either use cases or new ways of how to use AI today in practice.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. I'm so happy that you, as a young engineer, entrepreneur, is doing something meaningful in this space and, really pushing the envelope. So appreciate your time, appreciate what you guys do. And we will share all those information you shared with us, with our audience. So feel free to, check it out. Let us know what you think. If you had an awesome experience, please send us an email, go to our website, veterinarybusinessinstitute.com, and share your experience. I also want to take a minute to, in addition to thanking Sebastian, also thank our listeners. We cannot do what we do without you. So if you enjoyed this podcast, kindly share it with your friends and colleagues on social media, even just forward it to them via email or text. We would love more people who are listening to this podcast and benefiting from it. So till we meet again, this is Naren, one of the founders and co-host of this Veterinary Business Institute podcast. Have a wonderful rest of the week ahead.